Hello, everyone. So we're continuing our share in Dirshu Bahalacha, and Baruch Hashem, we have some time today. It's not such a hard Siman, so I think we're going to dive back a little bit into Pirkei Avos that we've been neglecting. So we're holding all the way at the end of the first parak of Pirkei Avos. We're holding in Parak Rishain, Mishnah Yud Ches. So the Mishnah says, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel said, Al shloisha dvarim ha'olam oimed. The world stands on three things. Now, before we go weiter, we have to explain. We had all the way back in the beginning of Pirkei Avos, in Parak Rishain in Mishnah Beis, we had Shimon HaTzadik. Shimon HaTzadik hayim mishiyari knesses hagdola. Hu ha'yomer, he used to say Al shloisha dvarim ha'olam oimed, and he said three things. He said Torah, Avodah, and Gemilas Chasadim. Here we have Rabbi Shimon Gamliel and he's going to list three different things. So the Rishonim point out that they were not speaking about the same things here. When Shimon HaTzadik said Al Shloisha Dvarim Ha'olam Ha'omed, he was talking on a much higher level. He was saying that there are three things that make the world worthwhile. The Rebbeinu Shalom created the world for Torah, Avodah, and Gemilas Chasadim. If we don't have Torah, Avodah, and Gemilas Chasadim in the world, then the Rebbeinu Shalom doesn't need a world. So then we don't have a world. That's not what Rabbi Shimon Gamliel is talking about. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel is talking about society. In order to have a civil society, in order to have a functioning society, where people could operate together and function together and live together, you need three things. So what do you need? So the Mishnah says, Al Hadin, you have to have justice. Val Emes, you have to have truth. Val Hasholem, and you have to have peace. And he brings a pasuk. The pasuk says in Zechariah, "Shenemar emas umishpat shalom shiftu b'sha'arechem." So here you have a pasuk in Zechariah that teaches us this concept that you have to have din, emes, and shalom. Now, what are these three things? So din is justice, and the truth is that din is very easy to understand. It's like the Rambam says, "Hu hanhagas hamedina b'yosher." You have to have a civil society. You cannot have anarchy. If people are going to live together and function together, there has to be a system of justice in place so that if somebody wrongs somebody else, it's going to be dealt with. Otherwise, you have chaos. If anybody can do whatever they want, so you have something, somebody else will come and steal it. Somebody doesn't like somebody, he'll go ahead and kill him. So if you're going to have anarchy, you cannot have a functioning society. So that's din. The second one is emes. You have to have truth. And I don't know the Rav here. Let me see. I think the Rav says by emes. Very simple. Vala emes shalo yishakru ish pa'amisai. That people should not lie to one each other. People have to be truthful one to the other. And the truth is that I think sometimes people don't give emes enough credit. We know we say Chaysamai Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu Emes, that the seal of the Rebbeinu Shalom is truthfulness. People sometimes are not so makpid, unfortunately, when it comes to Emes. And we have a very powerful Rabbeinu Yoina here. The Rabbeinu Yoina says, when it comes to Emes, the Rabbeinu Yoina says, Sha'afilu b'sipor dvarim ba'alma, ein loy la'adam l'shaker. Even if somebody is just telling over a story, watch the wire, honey. Even if somebody is just telling over a story, and he thinks it's not such a bad thing to stretch the truth a little bit. What do they call it? A fish story, right? Somebody comes and he says, oh, I went fishing. You should see the bass that I caught. It was 29 inches and so many pounds. It wasn't 29 inches. It was 19 inches. I just changed one digit, changed a 1 to a 2. What's the big harm? So I told somebody that I caught a bigger fish than I really caught. Is there really such harm in that? Says the Rabbeinu Yoina, yes. He says, Sha'afilu b'sipor dvarim ba'alma ein loy la'adam l'shaker. A person should not lie. And he says a very powerful reason why. He says, the pasuk in Yirmiyah says, Limdu l'shaynam daber sheker. Somebody teaches his tongue to speak falsehood. That means when you're used to telling fish stories, when you stretch the truth, and you're used to saying things that are imprecise, that are not truthful, your tongue learns to speak sheker. And now sheker rolls very easily off your tongue. And like the Rabbeinu Yoina says, Ki ha'adam hamargil l'shaynai ledaber sheker. somebody who teaches his tongue to speak sheker, b'dvarim she'ein behem loy hefsid v'loy tayeles, in things that he thinks doesn't matter. So he says, I'm not hurting anybody, nobody is losing, I'm not lying to somebody to steal from him, I'm just saying that the bass is bigger than it really was. But if you teach yourself to teach sheker in things that don't matter, where there's no loss and there's no gain, even when it comes to important things, look what he says. Lo yuchal loymar ha'emes. He won't be able to speak the truth. It's not only that it'll become easy for him to tell a lie. He's going to damage his tongue and he's going to damage his mouth to such an extent that he will not be able to tell the truth. That's how damaging it is. So you see over here the import of emes. And the truth is that the Rabbeinu Yoina says, where does this come from, that we have to be so careful with emes? He says, because the pasuk says, V'halachta b'drachav. The Rebbeinu Shalom commands us that we're supposed to follow in his ways. What are the ways of the Rebbeinu Shalom? Well, what does it say by the Rebbeinu Shalom? Hu emes, v'tarasai emes. The Rebbeinu Shalom is emes, and the Torah Akdosh is absolute emes. So v'halachta b'drachav, we have a tzivui, we have to follow the ways of the Rebbeinu Shalom. That means that we have to be very, very careful with emes. One other thing I would say about emes, and I always say over from my Rebbe, Reb Feinstein, Zal Zayin Gesund und Stark, he likes to talk about what happens in second grade, third grade, when the Rebbe is teaching Chumash, and they teach the story of Yaakov Avinu getting the brachas instead of Esav. So we know that Yitzchak said he called Esav to go get the brachas. Rivka told Yaakov that he should go bring food for Yitzchak so that he should get the brachas instead. So Yaakov Avinu came in, and his mother dressed him up in Esav's hairy clothing, so that in case Yitzchak will feel him, he should feel hairy like Esav. And he came in, but Yitzchak Avinu was a little suspicious. So Yitzchak Avinu asked Yaakov, "Who are you?" So what did Yaakov say? Yaakov said, "Anoichi Esav b'chayrecha." Okay, literally translated, I am Esav, your firstborn. Oh, so now the Rabbeim have a big problem, because what are you supposed to do with this? It looks like Yaakov Avinu told a lie. All right, so they look in Rashi, and Rashi says that, well, what Yaakov Avinu meant was, Anoichi. You asked, who am I? Right? Yitzchak Avinu asked Yaakov, who are you? So Yaakov Avinu answered, Anoichi. Who am I? I'm me, I. That's who I am. Who am I? I'm I. I happen to be Yaakov. I'm not Esav, I'm Yaakov. He didn't say that. He said, I. Esav b'chayrecha. Esav is your bechar. So the Rabbeim teach the kids, oh, Yaakov Avinu didn't lie. What did Yaakov Avinu say? Yaakov Avinu, yes, I asked him, who are you? He said, I, Kama, Esav is your bechar. Ah, okay, very nice. So like Reb Reuven always says, then the next day the kid comes in, and the Rebbe says, did you do your homework? And the kid says, yes, last night. Lie? I didn't tell a lie. You asked me, did I do my homework? I said yes, because 2 years ago, I remember I did my homework. And I said last night I meant I ate supper. Last night I ate supper. Now you tell me, you're a liar? So not me? A liar? What do you mean? I learned from Yaakov Avinu. I learned that you could parse your words, and you could say one thing, and you could mean something else, and you could say I'm not a liar. Therefore, says Reuven, that's not at all what Rashi means when Rashi says that Yaakov Avinu meant Anoichi Esav b'chayrecha. The problem that Yaakov Avinu had was that there are times that you're mechuyev to tell a lie. We know that the Chazal tell us you're allowed to lie b'nei darkei shalom. If you're going to avoid a fight, if you're going to avoid strife, so sometimes you're mechuyev to tell a lie. You're obligated to go tell a lie. But, says Chazal, sheker has to be so poisonous to you that even when you have to tell a lie, you have to figure out to parse your words so that the lie should be as small as humanly possible. Yaakov Avinu, in this case, Yaakov Avinu had to tell a lie. Yaakov Avinu had to tell Yitzchak Avinu. He had to say what he had to say. Somehow he had to answer the question, and he had to say, I'm Esav. But for Yaakov Avinu's tongue to tell a lie, that was like Yaakov Avinu taking sulfuric acid and putting it on his tongue. So if you have to put acid on your tongue, sometimes you go to the pharmacy and they give you a medicine for your kid and they tell you you're going to have a problem, your kid's not going to want to take it because this is the most awful tasting medicine that there is. Now in my days, when I was a kid, we took horrible tasting medicine and mommy said, too bad, it tastes bad, but you got to take the medicine. So we took the medicine. What are we going to do? Nowadays, kids are more spoiled. So now you go to the pharmacy and they have flavorings that they could put in the medicine. And sometimes they could add some strawberry flavor, they could add some raspberry flavor to the medicine, so it shouldn't be so bad. So for Yaakov Avinu to take that sheker and put it on his tongue was poison. It was worse than acid. So what he did was he parsed his words to the greatest extent possible to be memayet the lie, to make the lie as small as humanly possible. But avada, to go ahead and say that that's not a lie, of course it's a lie. Sheker is sheker. And this is something that we have to be very careful to teach our children. We have to teach the children the value of emes and how poisonous sheker is. I believe I'm saying accurately, I'm 99% sure that what I heard from my Rebbe, Reb Ruvain, was that one of the only times he got a patch from his father, Reb Moshe Feinstein, Zechus Tzaddik V'Kodesh Levracha, was when he told a lie. He told a lie, for that the Yeshiva gave him a patch. Because that's something that's poison. Lying is poison. The last thing that the Mishnah says is, from the three things, you have din, you have emes, and the last one is shalom. The last one is peace. My Rebbe is Zayin Gesund. His name is actually, the whole world knows him as Reb Ruvain. His name is Shalom Ruvain. And shalom is something that he's tremendously careful with. And it's what he learned from his father. Rav Moshe was famous for doing whatever he could to maintain shalom. You must maintain shalom at all costs. Shalom, like the Rabbeinu Yonah says over here, Shalom hu kailel kol tov ha'olam. Shalom includes everything that's good in the world. Because no matter what you have, if you don't have shalom, you don't have anything. You take a person who's rich, he's wealthy, and he's good looking, and he has a beautiful house and he has a beautiful car, but he has no shalom bayis. Every day he comes home, he's miserable. Every minute of his life is misery if he has no shalom. On a larger scale, if there's no shalom in the world, what do you have? You have countries fighting with each other, and there's war, and there's people being killed, and even when they're not being killed, they're living in fear. So shalom is desperately important. Also, shalom, in order for Klal Yisrael to fulfill its role in the world, Klal Yisrael has to be able to function as a harmonious unit. It's like I say many times. One member of Klal Yisrael cannot accomplish the true role of Klal Yisrael. In order for Klal Yisrael to accomplish what they're supposed to accomplish, Klal Yisrael has to be a sum total of all of its units. Haman was on to something when Haman told Achashverosh, Yeshnai am echad mefuzar u'mefoyrad beina amim. He said, Klal Yisrael, they can't do what they're supposed to do anyway because they're all spread out. They're all yechidim. They're all individuals. As individuals, Klal Yisrael cannot be effective. Klal Yisrael is effective when we are the sum total of all of our parts. And for that, you have to have shalom. If this one is sniping at that one and that one is sniping at this one, what kind of Klal Yisrael is that? Imagine if there's a shir. You have a daf yomi shir. You have 10 people in a daf yomi shir. They're busy fighting with each other the whole time. That's learning Torah. But when they're sitting down to learn and they love each other, even if they fight the Milchamta Shel Torah, they might argue over what Pshat in the Gemara is, but they teach each other like mention, and they're willing to listen to each other. And each one is learning from the other one and teaching the other one. Then you have something. So Shalom is crucially important. I can't walk away from a Mishnah that talks about Shalom without telling you a quick story from Rav Moshe Taka Zechus Tzaddik V'Kodesh Levracha. When years ago there was a takeout store in Borough Park, Oneg, that was owned by the Palgon brothers. There was another famous takeout store, Shik's. Shik's was originally located on 13th Avenue, and Oneg was located on 12th Avenue, and Shik's moved. And they moved just around the corner from Oneg. So Oneg, I think, was 2 doors down on 12th Avenue, and Shik moved into a store that was 1 store down on the side street. So literally right there. So the Palgons felt very threatened by the presence of Shik's takeout store right next to them. They're going to lose business. People are going to go in there and they're going to buy by him instead of buying by us. The Palgons were Talmidim of Rav Moshe's. So they came to Rav Moshe and they asked Rav Moshe if they could take Shik's to a din Torah. So Rav Moshe said, listen, you want to know if you have a case and you want to know if you have a complaint? No. Maybe you do, but you shouldn't go to the entire anyway, because there's just going to be a fight, and then there isn't going to be shalom, and then families aren't going to talk to each other, and then people are going to, oh, you shot by him, and you shot by him, and these people aren't going to talk to each other, and those people aren't going to talk to each other. It's going to be a disaster. Don't do it. So they asked him, what are we going to do for Parnasa? We have to support our families. Rav Moshe told them, if you won't make a fight, you'll be fine. Not only your Parnasa won't be hurt, your Parnasa will get better. Years later, they listened to Rav Moshe. There was no fight. Years later, the Palgon brothers testified that business only got better. From that day on, business only got better. It never got worse. Indeed, after Oneg shut its doors, after the Palgons retired, sheiks rented Oneg's old store, and one of the Palgon brothers worked behind the cash register in Shik's store. So they became good friends, Nachalis. Okay, that's Pirkei Avos. Now let's go into Mishnah Berurah. So we are holding on Reish Mem Gimel Amid Beis. We are beginning Siman Shin Ayin Daled. Nistam b'Shabbos Pesach Oichaloin b'Makom she'erev bay. What happens if on Shabbos the doorway or the window, the opening that allowed you to go ahead and join two chatzeros into one combined chatzer? So let's just remember over here, we have two chatzeros. I always use, already, the bungalow colony. I'm in one now. I always use the bungalow colony analogy. So your colony A and colony B are right next door to each other, and there's a fence. There's a 10 tefach tall fence that's between them. And there's an opening in the fence. So because there's an opening in the fence, because there's a Pesach, so they have an option. Their options are open to them. Either colony A and colony B could join into one joint combined Eruv Chatzeros. Then people from colony A will be allowed to take their lawn chairs, even if they were Shavas Babayas. They could take a lawn chair that was Shavas Babayas in colony A, and they could bring it to the lawn of colony B, or they could bring it to a house in colony B, or you could take the cholent from colony B and bring it to your friend's house in colony A, because you joined in a combined Erev, and you could do that because you have an opening in the fence between the two chatzeros. If you did not have an opening in the fence, let's say you had a 10 tefach tall fence, and you don't have a gate, you don't even have a window, you don't have anything, it's closed off. So then, colony A and colony B cannot combine in a joint Erev. Colony A could make their Erev. They'll be allowed to carry from the bungalows in colony A to any other bungalow, or from the bungalow to their chotzer, or from their chotzer to their bungalows, but they will not be allowed to go over and take something to colony B. They can't take something from their bungalow to the chotzer or to another bungalow in colony B, because they're not joined with them. How could they? They're separate. They can't join. So now what we want to know over here is, what happens if there was an opening in the gate between colony A and colony B? So before Shabbos, they did make a joint combined Erev. But now on Shabbos, something happened, and the opening became closed. The example that the Mishnah Berurah gives over here is Shenafla Mapilis. Let's say it wasn't a chain link fence. Let's say it was a stone wall that separated the two chatzeros. But there was an opening in the wall, and that opening was at least Dalet Tvachim, so it makes a Pesach, so you could walk from colony A to colony B. But now part of the wall collapsed, and the wall is still 10 Tvachim tall, but the opening is closed up. So now you have no opening. So before Shabbos, you went ahead and you made an Erev based on the fact that you had an opening from one Chatzar to the other Chatzar. But now, on Shabbos, the opening got closed. What's the halacha? So, says the Mechaber, Erevu derech haloin, you made an Erev based on the opening of a window, oy Pesach, or because you had a doorway, shebeineim, that was between two Chatzeros, v'nistam b'Shabbos. And now, on Shabbos, it went ahead and it became closed. Says the Mechaber, mutarim lehishtamesh, you're allowed to continue using the houses, the Chatzeros, you could still use the Erev. So even though the opening got closed up on Shabbos, you could still take your lawn chair, Shavas Babayas, in a bungalow in colony A, and you could bring it over to the Chatzar of colony B on Shabbos afternoon for the Pirkei Avos here. So even though now you don't have an opening, so now technically you cannot make an Erev. But you did have an opening at the outset of Shabbos, so even though it became closed up over Shabbos, you could still use the Erev. The Erev remains in force, and you could use the Erev. And like the Mechaber says, Mutarim li'ishtamesh, you're allowed to make use derech goyva ha'kaisel, by going over the wall, the chayrav, or if there's a little hole in the wall. Now, normally you can't make an Erev between Chatzar A and Chatzar B based on the idea that you could go over the wall. If the wall is 10 tvachim tall, it makes a divider. We don't say you can make an Erev based on going over the wall. If you have an opening in the wall, but the opening is not Daled al Daled, it's a little tiny opening, we don't say that you can make an Erev because you have an opening. That opening is too small. It doesn't allow you to make an Erev. But since you had an Erev in place at the outset of Shabbos, because at the outset of Shabbos you did have an opening between the two Chatzeros, now you can transfer things back and forth over the wall, through any openings that you might have, not a problem for the rest of Shabbos. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ois Katan Aleph, V'nistam b'Shabbos. You had an opening, and that opening allowed you to make an Erev, but it became closed up on Shabbos. Says the Chavetz Chaim, Kigoyin, for example, Shenofla ma'pelis kenegdoi. Something collapsed and it closed up the opening. Ice cotton bays, mutarim lihishtamesh. You're allowed to continue to make use of these two chatzeros. What does that mean? Mizoi lazoi. You're allowed to transfer items back and forth between the two chatzeros. You're allowed to take something from a keli sheshavas babayis in chatzer A, and you're allowed to take that keli sheshavas babayis and bring it to the chatzer in chatzer B, or to one of the houses in chatzer B, or vice versa. B'Shabbos zu. On this Shabbos, you're allowed to do this. Now, let's just take a look very, very quickly in the Sharet Tzion, Ois Katan Aleph. The Chavetz Chaim points out in the Sharet Tzion that this is mutter for the duration of this Shabbos, the L'Shabbos Acheres, but for the next Shabbos, Bevadai Osir. You have to fix this before Shabbos. You can't say, well, I had an Erev at the beginning of Shabbos, Parsha Shlach, so now for the whole Parsha Shlach, I could make use of the Erev, and next week is Kairach, and Kairach, I don't have to bother fixing it. No, certainly you have to fix it before Shabbos Kairach. Says the Mishnah Berurah weiter, Ois Katan Beis, so mutarim lehishtamesh b'zoi lazoi b'Shabbazu, the chol shekain, and certainly kol akas la'atzma the muteris. Certainly, each one of the chatzerim, chatzer A and chatzer B, are allowed to take kelim sheshavsu babayis and move them into their own chatzer. Af oisa she'ena erev munachas b'seicha, even the chatzer that doesn't have the erev by them. Remember, when Chatzer A and Chatzer B join in a combined Erev, what do? They take a box of matzahs from Chatzer A and they put it into one of the units of Chatzer B. So what the Mishnah Berurah over here is telling me is, the Erev remains in force. You can even transfer things from one Chatzer, from Chatzer A to Chatzer B. Certainly, in Chatzer A or in Chatzer B themselves, you could take a Keli Sheshavas Babayis, if the Pirkei Avos share is Shabbos afternoon in Chatzer A, and you want to take a lawn chair that started out Shabbos in one of the bungalows of Chatzer A and bring it out to the lawn, certainly you could do that. You have an Eruv Chatzeros. Even if your Erev was moved over to Chatzer B, because that's how you joined in a combined Erev. Chatzer A made their own Eruv Chatzeros, Chatzer B made their own Eruv Chatzeros, then Chatzer A took their box of matzahs and put it in Chatzer B to combine them all in one joint combined Erev. So now, the opening between Chatzer A and Chatzer B got closed. So not only are you're allowed to go from Chatzer A to Chatzer B, but you're certainly, says the Chavetz Chaim, Chatzer A still has its own Erev, and Chatzer B still has its own Erev. That also remains in force, even for the side that doesn't have the box of matzahs by them. Ois Katan Gimel, derech goyva ha'kaisel v'chayrav. You could transfer items back and forth between the two chatzeros by going over the height of the wall or through holes. Ritzayna loymar, says the Chavetz Chaim, what the Bechari means to say is, af agav da'achshav shenistam. Even though now that the opening that existed between the two chatzeros got closed up, and ein ru'uyin lehis arev yachad. Now, if you wanted to make an erev from scratch, you would not be allowed to. Because these small openings that are in the wall between the two chatzeros are not daled al daled, so they're not big enough to allow you to make a joint combined erev. Still in all, afilu hachi lo nispatel ha'erev al Shabbosu. Still in all, the erev does not become bottle for this Shabbos. At the outset of Shabbos, you had a good erev because you had a doorway between the two chatzeros. That erev does not become bottle, and you could still, the erev remains in force for the rest of this Shabbos. And now finally the Chavetz Chaim tells us why the halacha is this way. Because since it was mutter at the outset of Shabbos, since at the outset of Shabbos you did have a good erev, hutter l'chol Shabbos, it remains in force for the entire Shabbos, and moving things back and forth remains mutter for the entire Shabbos. Okay, that was the beginning of Sif Aleph. Now let's see weiter. Now the Mechaber is going to tell us another interesting chiddush. Remember, we spoke out many times earlier that the minig has become, how do you make it a Eruv Chatzeros? They don't make it a Eruv Chatzeros every Erev Shabbos. We don't make it a Eruv Chatzeros every week. Instead, what we tend to do is to make it a Eruv Chatzeros for the whole year. We brought down that the minig was on Erev Pesach to go ahead and make an Eruv Chatzeros for the entire year. Oh, so now the Mechaber is going to talk about a case where you made an Erev for the whole year. And the Erev was in force for the first Shabbos, for the second Shabbos, for the third Shabbos. And now, on a Wednesday, in the middle of the year, the opening between the two Chatzeros got closed. Now, even you made an Erev for the whole year, you still need an opening between the two Chatzeros in order to have an Erev. Without an opening, you can't have an Erev. So, you made an Erev at the beginning of the year, and now, smack in the middle of the year, in the middle of the week, on one day, the opening got closed up. All right. Now Shabbos started, and somebody says, hey, wait a second. You know, our whole Erev is based upon that doorway in the wall between our chutzner and the neighboring chutzner. But take a look. The opening is closed. So how do we have an Erev? The opening is closed. So somebody goes and points out to the guy, not getting into the Shabbos here, Amir La'akum, the guy did it himself. The guy comes and the guy sees that the doorway is blocked up, so he takes his shovel and he moves the rubble out of the way, and now it's open. So the Mechaber is going to say that the halacha is that the Erev comes back into force, even though at the outset of this Shabbos you didn't have an opening. But since this Erev was made at the beginning of the year, and it was made with intent that it should be in force for the whole year, what we say is that Erev became chal, that Erev became active on the first Erev Shabbos of the year. And at that point in time, you had a valid opening. Now, since the opening got closed, if the opening got closed during the week, so for this Shabbos, you don't have an Erev, because Lamaisa, you don't have an opening. But if it got opened on Shabbos, even though at the outset of this Shabbos it was not opened, since at the beginning of the year, when you made the Erev for the whole year, it was open, and now Lamaisa on Shabbos afternoon, it was reopened, the Erev goes back into force. Let's see it in the words of the Mechaber. Let's see what the Mechaber says. In my Mishnah Berurah, it's the second line. Va'afilu im Erev l'shana. Let's say you made an Erev for the entire year. V'nistam ha'pesach b'choil. And now, the opening upon which you based your Erev became closed one day during the week. V'niftach b'Shabbos. But then the opening became reopened on Shabbos, and now the Ramah sticks in a side chiddush. Va'afilu stama b'mezid. This is true even if you closed it up with intent, not just something collapsed that it got blocked. You actually went biyadayim and closed it up. But now, so again, what happened over here? You put the Erev into play in the beginning of the year. And now at some point during the year, on a weekday, the opening upon which the Erev was based became closed. And now on Shabbos afternoon it got reopened. Says the Mechaber, Chazar ha'erev leheteroi. The Erev now goes back into play, and now you could take your lawn chair, sheshavas pabayis, and you could bring it to the other chutzner for the Pirkei Avos shir. Says the Mishnah Berurah in Ois Cotton Daled, the niftach b'Shabbos, the opening that got closed up got reopened on Shabbos. Ritzaynai loymar, the Chavetz Chaim says, what the Mechaber is trying to tell you over here is a bigger chiddush than what the Mechaber said first. Loy mibaya im niftach kaidem HaShabbos. Certainly, if the opening got closed on Wednesday, and then on Friday morning it was reopened, bevadai have erev. Certainly in that case the erev is good. The habeis knisas haShabbos, because when Shabbos came in on Friday afternoon, hayu kvar psuchim mizulazu, the opening was back. So certainly in a case where the opening got closed on Wednesday and then Friday morning it was opened, certainly the erev is good, because why not? At the Zman Knesset Shabbos, when Shabbos started Friday afternoon, the opening was there. So in that case, certainly the erev is good. But now the Mechaber wants to tell you even a bigger chiddush. Ela afilu im niftach b'Shabbos gufa. Even if on Shabbos itself, the opening was reopened. So at the outset of Shabbos, the opening was closed. So from the beginning of Shabbos until now, you didn't have an erev because your opening was closed. Ela afilu im niftach b'Shabbos gufa. Even if on Shabbos itself the opening is reopened, mikam makayim kevan shebe'eis hanachas ha'erev. Since at the time when you made the erev at the beginning of the year, sheheniach lekama shabbosais, at that time you made the erev to cover many shabbosais, or l'shada, or you did it for the entire year. Haya pesach mizul lezu v'chala erev. At that time on erev Pesach, when you made the erev for the entire year, you had an opening between the two chatzeros. Lachein. Even though now on this Shabbos, when Shabbos came in, the opening was closed. And therefore at that point in time the erev was no good. And at the beginning of this Shabbos the erev was talking no good. So you made an erev on erev Pesach. And you did it for the whole year. And for 10 Shabbosim the erev was fine. But on this Shabbos, Parsha Shlach, the opening upon which the erev was based got closed. So from the beginning of Shabbos Parsha Shlach until Shabbos afternoon, you didn't have an erev because you didn't have an opening, and you didn't have an opening at the beginning of Shabbos. So for this Shabbos, you didn't have an erev. But now the guy came and he cleared out the opening, so now it became reopened. Mikamakam loy nispatel. The erev never became bottle. It never became nullified. Umiyad sheniftach, and as soon as the opening gets reopened, chazar ha'erev lahateri harishain, the erev goes back into play, and now the erev is once again okay. So again, the two halachas that we saw here so far in Sif Aleph are like this. The first halacha that we saw was you had two chatzeros, and there was an opening from chatzer A to chatzer B. So because there was an opening, based on that opening, you made a joint combined Eruv Chatzeros to join the two Chatzeros together in an Erev. Now on Shabbos, that opening became closed. No problem. You could continue to use that Erev for the duration of Shabbos. Why? Because since it was mutter at the beginning of Shabbos, it remains mutter for the rest of Shabbos. That's the first halacha that we saw. The second halacha that we saw was, you made an erev for the entire year. And now at some point during the year, on a weekday, the opening between the two chatzeros got closed. So now, when Shabbos started, you didn't have an opening. So when Shabbos started, your erev was no good. Now on Shabbos, that opening was reopened. The erev becomes good again. Why does it become good again? Because when you made this erev at the beginning of the year, you made it with intent that it should work for the entire year. So that's really when the erev was chal. The erev really began, the erev was really activated at the beginning of the year for the entire year. And at that point it was good. So as long as the opening was closed, the erev was not effective because you didn't have an opening. We can't say, since it was mutter in the beginning of the year, it's mutter for the whole year, like we say on Shabbos. On Shabbos we say if it was mutter at the beginning of Shabbos, it's mutter for the whole Shabbos. And we're not going to say, since it was mutter on Erev Pesach, it's mutter for the whole year. That far we don't go. So if the opening was closed during the week, and now on Shabbos it's still closed, you don't have an Erev. But if the guy comes and opens the opening, so now it becomes reopened, now the Erev goes back into play, and now you have a good Erev. Now I want to point you to the Bir Halacha, the first Bir Halacha over here in Shinai and Daled, Dibra HaMaschel V'Nistam B'Shabbos, where the Chavetz Chaim tells me another case. The first halacha that we had here in the Mechaber was a case where you had an opening, and the opening became closed on Shabbos. So over there we say, Kevon shehuter b'tchilas HaShabbos, since it was mutter at the beginning of Shabbos, it's mutter for the duration of Shabbos, and we don't care that the opening was closed. Now says the Chavetz Chaim, Aval nistam mi ba'od yom. Let's say you made your Eruvei Chatzeros Friday morning. So you came up, everybody came up to the bungalow colony on Thursday night. Friday morning, the Rav realized we needed a Eruvei Chatzeros. So Friday morning at 10 o'clock, he made it a Eruvei Chatzeros. Okay. Well, let's change the case a little bit because we're talking about two Chatzeros. We're not talking about one bungalow colony. So you had Chatzer A and Chatzer B. And they want to join together in a combined Erev. So they realized, all right, we have to make an Erev. So at 10 o'clock in the morning, the two Rabbanim got together and they looked at the colonies and they said, all right, we have a fence between us, but we have a gate in the fence. So we can make an Erev. So they go ahead and they make an Erev at 10 o'clock in the morning. All right. Now, what happens if the opening doesn't close up on Shabbos? If they make the Erev and the opening closed up on Shabbos, so then the Mechaber said, don't worry. The Erev remains in play for the rest of Shabbos because Kevin Shehutra Hutra. But what if the opening closes at 12 o'clock in the afternoon on Erev Shabbos? So they made the Erev at 10 o'clock Friday morning, and 12 o'clock Friday afternoon the opening gets closed. Says the Bir Halacha, Avalim Nistam Mi Ba'od Yom. If the opening upon which the Eruvei Chatzeros is based is closed up before Shabbos begins, afilu chazar v'niftach b'Shabbos, even if it's reopened on Shabbos, asurin, then it's going to be aser. So again, what's the case over here? They made their joint combined Erev 10 o'clock in the morning on Friday morning. 12 o'clock Friday afternoon, the opening gets closed. Shabbos afternoon, somebody realizes that the opening is closed, and the guy comes and the guy reopens the opening. The Erev does not come into play, because like the Bir Halacha says, Lefisha Adayin Lo Kanu Erev Me'olam, because over here you never had an Erev. You made an Eruvei Chatzeros 11 o'clock Friday morning. Was it ever Chal? The Erev is Chal ben Hashmashas. The Erev is Chal when Shabbos begins. When Shabbos began, you didn't have an opening between the two Chatzeros. So over here, you never had an Erev. Shekniyas Erev hu ben Hashmashos. The Erev is Chal at the time of ben Hashmashos. The Kan lo yoya Erev ben Hashmashos. Over here, at the time of ben Hashmashos, you didn't have an Erev. Kevin Chapesla Sasum, because the opening was closed. Va'afilu im ervu kvar lifnei Shabbos she'avro l'Shabbos achas. Even let's say you made this Erev last Shabbos. You didn't make the Erev this Friday. You made the Erev last Friday. So the Erev was already in play for one Shabbos. But you didn't do it with the intent that the Erev should be valid for multiple Shabbos. You didn't do it for the whole summer. You didn't say, I'm making this Erev now for the whole summer. You realized, you know what? Let's make a joint combined Erev for this Shabbos, for Parsha Shlach. But you didn't have in mind you're doing it for the whole summer. So you did it for Parsha Shlach, and for the duration of Parsha Shlach, you had no problem. You made it 10 o'clock Erev Shabbos Parsha Shlach. You did it based on an opening between the two colonies. You went through the whole Shabbos Parsha Shlach without a problem. The opening remained open for the entire Shabbos. Now comes Parshas Korach. Parshas Korach, on Erev Shabbos Parshas Korach, the opening gets closed. So now you'll tell me, well, maybe we should say, since the Erev was Chal for Parshas Shlach, now that on Parshas Korach at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Shabbos afternoon, we realized that the opening between our two colonies that got closed, now the guy will reopen it. Maybe now the Erev should come back into play. Says the Bir Halacha, no. Ein Yechalim Lismay Chalav B'Shabbos Zu Achar Sheniftach HaPesach. Parshas Korach, the Erev is not going to wake up. Because Friday morning, Erev Shabbos Parshas Korach, when the opening got closed, the Erev was bottle. It doesn't become reawakened. You made an Erev Shabbos Parshas Shlach. That Erev became batal Wednesday afternoon. Now, when you reopen the opening, Parshas Kairach Shabbos afternoon, the Erev doesn't suddenly magically get reawakened. Now you'll ask me, but wait a second, how about the second halacha that the Mechaber taught me? The Mechaber told me if I make an Erev Pesach for the whole year, and on one Wednesday afternoon the opening between the two Chatzeres gets closed, so the Erev is no good. Now if the guy reopens it Shabbos afternoon, the Erev becomes good again. So what's the difference between these two cases? The difference is a critical difference that makes all the difference in the world. When you made the Erev on Erev Pesach, you made it for the whole year. So over there, the Erev is Chal on that first Erev Shabbos, it's Chal for the whole year. Now it's true, if the opening becomes closed at some point during the year, so the Erev can't be effective because there's no opening between the two Chatzeres. So the Erev is not effective, but it's not batal. It's not effective, but it's not invalidated. So now, if the guy comes and reopens it, so now the Erev comes back into play, because now the Erev never became invalidated. In this case, where you made the Erev, and you made the Erev 10 o'clock Friday morning, and now at 12 o'clock Friday afternoon, the opening gets closed, over here the Erev became invalidated. Even if you made the Erev Shabbos Parsha Shlach, and the Erev was in play for the whole Parsha Shlach, and now it became invalidated on Erev Shabbos Parshas Kairach, and it got reopened Parshas Kairach afternoon. Again, over there, the Erev became invalidated on Erev Shabbos Parshas Kairach, because it never was meant to be working for Parshas Kairach. So, okay, when the opening got closed, this Erev is over. Now you need a new Erev. Like the Bir Halacha finishes over here. The Erev L'Shana Shani, the Mechaber's second case where you made an Erev for the whole year, that's different. Shama Erev Mitkila Al Kol Shabbosais, because then you clearly made the Erev that it should be effective for all the Shabbosais of the year. The Kana Erev B'Shabbos Rishayna, so the Erev is Chal on that first Erev Shabbos at Ben Hashmashos, Shaya Pesach Pasuach, and at that point you had a valid opening. So then, even if later during the year on one weekday the opening gets closed, and on a Shabbos afternoon it gets opened, even the last Shabbos of the year, the Erev gets reawakened, it comes back into play because it was never nisbatel. Okay, we'll continue Sif Aleph, Mirz Hashem, not tomorrow, tomorrow's Erev Shabbos, Mirz Hashem Sunday, we'll continue Sif Aleph. Again, I miss you all, but it's good to be able to continue the share in this way. Thank you so much, have a great day, bye.